All right, so today we are diving into how to make studying less of a chore. We've got this awesome article titled How I Learned to Love Studying that you all sent in. And honestly, it's packed with really cool tips. I mean, we're talking Pomodoro technique, making over your study space, even turning studying into a game. But to really help us unpack the why behind these hacks, I've got an expert here with us who can help us connect the dots between these simple ideas and how our brains actually learn best.
Yeah, it's fascinating that the author here seems to have stumbled upon some pretty solid cognitive science principles. It's not just about gimmicks. These are strategies rooted in a deeper understanding of learning.
Exactly. And the first thing that jumped out at me was this whole idea of shifting your mindset about studying. Like the author talks about going from viewing it as a punishment to seeing it as a tool for growth. So, what's the psychology behind that?
Well, it's all about embracing what Carol Dweck calls a growth mindset. It's this belief that your intelligence isn't fixed. You can actually get smarter by putting in the effort. And the really cool thing is, studies show that people who adopt this mindset actually perform better. They're more resilient, they embrace challenges, and they see setbacks as opportunities to learn and grow.
Okay, so I'm totally on board with that. But how do you actually cultivate a growth mindset? Is it just like positive self talk or is there more to it?
It's definitely more than just thinking happy thoughts. It's about actively challenging your fixed mindset beliefs. For example, if you find yourself thinking, I'm just bad at math, try reframing it as, I haven't mastered this concept yet. It's that little word yet that opens up the possibility for improvement. Another powerful technique is to focus on the process, not just the outcome. So instead of getting hung up on grades, celebrate the effort you put in, the strategies you tried, and the progress you made along the way.
See, this is why I love having an expert on board. Like, these are the nuggets of wisdom I wouldn't have caught on my own. But let's get into some of the practical techniques from the article. The author is a huge fan of the Pomodoro technique, 25 minutes of focused work followed by a 5-minute break. I've heard of it, but honestly, does that really work?
It's not just some trendy time management trick. It's
Yeah.
actually based on how our brains work. Our attention spans aren't designed for hours of uninterrupted focus. We naturally cycle through periods of high alertness and dips in concentration. The Pomodoro technique works with these natural rhythms by incorporating regular breaks, which prevent mental fatigue and give your brain a chance to consolidate information. It's like hitting the reset button on your focus.
I've actually tried it before, but I always felt guilty about taking breaks, like I should be pushing through and studying for as long as possible.
That's a common misconception. Those breaks are not wasted time. They're crucial for maintaining focus and preventing burnout. In fact, research suggests that short breaks can actually boost creativity and problem-solving abilities. So don't skimp on them. Use those 5 minutes to get up, move around, stretch, grab a snack,
Yeah.
or anything that helps you feel refreshed and re-energized.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Now let's talk about study spaces. The author goes all out creating this cozy den with fairy lights and fluffy blankets. Is that really necessary? I mean, I usually just study at my kitchen table.
Well, not everyone needs a Pinterest-worthy study haven. But the point is that our environment has a huge impact on our mood, focus, and even cognitive performance. It's a field called environmental psychology. Think about it. How do you feel in a cluttered, chaotic space versus a clean, organized one?
I definitely feel more stressed and distracted in messy space.
Exactly. Your study space should be a sanctuary for learning, a place where you feel calm, focused, and inspired. And the good news is you don't need a complete makeover to achieve this. Just a few simple tweaks can make a big difference.
Like what? Give us some actionable tips. What are some things our listener can do to optimize their study space without going overboard?
Well, first off, think about decluttering. A clear space equals a clear mind. Even just tidying up your desk can make a big difference. Then consider lighting. Natural light is best, but if you're studying at night, make sure you have adequate lighting that's not too harsh or too dim. And don't underestimate the power of personalization. Add a few things that bring you joy, maybe a plant, a favorite photo, or even a scented candle like the author. It's about creating a space that feels inviting and conducive to focus.
I'm already feeling more zen just thinking about it. Speaking of creating a mood, the author talks about using music to enhance their study sessions. They ditched the pop songs and opted for lo-fi beats and instrumental soundtracks. Is there any science to back that up?
There's actually a lot of research on the impact of music on cognitive function. Some studies suggest that certain types of music, particularly instrumental music with a steady rhythm, can actually enhance focus and concentration.
So it's not just about personal preference.
Right, it's not just about what sounds good. It's about finding music that works with your brain, not against it. Music with lyrics can be distracting, especially if you're working on tasks that require verbal processing. On the other hand, instrumental music, especially genres like classical, ambient, or lo-fi, can create a calming and focused atmosphere, almost like a sonic cocoon.
That makes sense. I've definitely noticed that when I'm trying to write lyrics can totally derail my train of thought, so lo-fi beats it is. Now, this next tip is where things get really interesting. The author talks about gamifying the study process. I mean, who wouldn't want to earn points for conquering those challenging chapters? But how do you actually turn studying into a game?
Gamification is all about tapping into the psychology of motivation and reward. It's about taking something that might feel like a chore and turning it into something engaging and even fun. Think about the elements that make games so addictive. Things like challenges, goals, rewards, feedback, and a sense of progress. You can apply these same principles to studying.
Okay, I'm starting to see the possibilities here. But give us some concrete examples. How can our listener actually gamify their study routine?
There are tons of ways. You could create a point system for completing tasks, set up a reward system for reaching milestones, or even use apps or websites that incorporate game-like elements into the learning process. For example, you could try a flashcard app that turns memorization into a quiz show, or a language learning app that rewards you for completing lessons and unlocking new levels.
That's brilliant. It's like tricking your brain into enjoying the process. And speaking of making studying more enjoyable, the author raves about the benefits of having study buddies. They talk about quizzing each other, laughing at mistakes, and celebrating those small victories together. It sounds kind of fun, actually.
Collaborative learning can be incredibly powerful. When we discuss concepts with others, we're forced to articulate our understanding, clarify our thinking, and consider different perspectives. It's like having a built-in accountability system and a support group all rolled into one.
But what about those of us who are more introverted? I personally find group study sessions to be more distracting than helpful.
That's completely valid. Not everyone thrives in a group setting. The key is to find what works best for you. If you're more of an independent learner, you can still reap the benefits of collaboration by finding a study partner who shares your style and preferences. Or you could try joining online study groups or forums, where you can interact with others at your own pace and on your own terms.
I like that tailoring the approach to your individual personality. Now, throughout the article, the author keeps coming back to this idea of remembering your why. What do they mean by that, and why is it so important?
It's all about staying connected to your motivation, to the bigger picture of why you're putting in all this effort. When you have a strong sense of purpose, it becomes easier to push through those inevitable moments of frustration, boredom, or self-doubt.
So it's like having that North Star guiding you through the rough waters of exam prep.
Exactly. It's about remembering why you started this journey in the first place. Maybe you're passionate about a particular subject, you have ambitious career goals, or you simply love the feeling of expanding your knowledge. Whatever your why is, keep it front and center.
Okay, but how do you actually do that? How do you keep that motivation alive when you're staring at a mountain of textbooks and deadlines? Give us some actionable tips here.
Visualize your goals. Create a vision board. Write a letter to your future self. Or simply spend a few minutes each day imagining yourself achieving those goals. Surround yourself with inspiration quotes, pictures, anything that reminds you of what you're working towards. And don't forget to celebrate your progress along the way. Acknowledge those small victories, a challenging concept you finally grasped, a practice exam you aced, a chapter you finished. These little wins fuel your motivation and keep you moving forward.
I love that, finding ways to inject a little bit of joy and celebration into the process. Now, before we move on to the author's final insights, I want to pause for a moment and ask you a question. Out of all the tips we've discussed so far, is there one that stands out to you as being particularly powerful or perhaps surprising?
Hmm. What's really resonated with me is this idea of active learning. It's not just about passively absorbing information. It's about engaging with the material, asking questions, making connections, and relating it to your own experiences. It's about becoming an active participant in the construction of your own knowledge. And I think that's a really empowering concept.
I completely agree. It's like taking ownership of your learning journey. Now let's dive back into the article. The author wraps up by talking about a few more unconventional study tactics. One that caught my eye was the suggestion to incorporate movement and physical activity into your study routine. I mean, I get that exercise is good for you, but how does that tie into studying?
Well, it turns out that movement can actually boost brain function. Exercise increases blood flow to the brain, which delivers oxygen and nutrients that are essential for optimal cognitive performance. And there's evidence that physical activity can enhance memory, attention, and even creativity.
So, are we talking about hitting the gym between chapters? Or are there more subtle ways to incorporate movement into a study session?
You don't necessarily need a full workout to reap the benefits. Even short bursts of activity can make a difference. The author mentions taking dance breaks, which is a great way to energize yourself and have a little fun while you study. You could also try walking or stretching during your Pomodoro breaks, or even just standing up and moving around while you read.
I actually do pace around when I'm on the phone, so maybe I'll try that while I'm memorizing vocabulary words. Now, another tip the author mentions is finding ways to connect the material to your own life and experiences. How does that help with learning?
When we can relate information to something we already know or care about, it becomes much more meaningful and memorable. Our brains are wired to seek patterns and connections. So finding ways to personalize the material helps us make sense of it and integrate it into our existing knowledge base.
So instead of just memorizing facts in isolation, you're weaving them into the tapestry of your own life experiences.
Exactly. The author talks about creating stories or analogies to help them remember complex concepts. That's a great technique. You could also try relating the material to your hobbies, your goals, or even current events. The more connections you can make, the more likely you are to remember the information.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive. I feel like I've learned so much about how to approach studying in a more effective and enjoyable way. Before we wrap things up, is there anything else from the article that you think our listeners should keep in mind?
I think the most important takeaway is that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to studying. What works for one person might not work for another. The key is to experiment with different strategies. Be mindful of what helps you focus and learn best, and personalize your approach to fit your individual needs and preferences.
So it's all about becoming a student of your own learning process.
Yes, and don't be afraid to break the mold. If something feels like a chore, find a way to make it more engaging. If a traditional method isn't working for you, try something unconventional. The author's journey shows that studying doesn't have to be a drag. With a little creativity and a willingness to experiment, you can actually learn to love the process.
What a fantastic note to end on. I'm feeling so inspired to revamp my own study routine. So to our listener out there who's ready to conquer their study goals, we hope this deep dive has given you the tools and insights you need to make learning a more enjoyable and effective experience. Remember, it's a journey, not a destination.
And the most important thing is to stay curious, keep experimenting, and never stop learning.
On that note, we'll bid you farewell. Happy studying.